Peter Thiel funded all of this. Peter Thiel, he went to Hogan and said, look, I want you to bring this suit. I'll fund it. The outcome, of course, was one where Gawker gets this judgment against him. A jury awarded $140 million. And it was just a wonderful verdict, in my opinion, a wonderful verdict.
Welcome to Life's Third Act, an enlightening look at estate planning, retirement, and beyond.
Welcome to another episode of Life's Third Act. This week we're going to be talking about Hulk Hogan. Now, I know that some of you are thinking, I don't like wrestling, and I know that name, but I'm not interested. You might be, because I kind of fell in that category myself. I don't watch wrestling. I don't know much about it. I don't understand what the organizations are and the rules and whatnot, so I'm completely unfamiliar with it. But, of course, I know the name, and you know the name. Well, it's interesting. Somebody who achieves that level of whether it's fame or infamy deserves looking at, quite frankly. And I think that you'll be impressed with a very interesting life he lived. And not surprisingly, there are lessons to be learned with respect to his planning, which is what this show's really about, is the planning. What can we learn about how people set themselves up for the balance of their lives and for their loved ones thereafter? How do they set that up, and how well do they do? And when they don't do well, what can we learn from it? And even when they do well, what could they have done better? So that's kind of the purpose of this show. Those of you who watch us regularly, we appreciate it. Please like us and hit the thumbs up and subscribe. Subscribing is important too. And I also want to mention what we've only started doing recently, and that's actually promoting the law firm Cordell & Cordell. Oddly enough, even though we practice domestic relations as well as estate planning, for the last 8 or 9 years of this show, prior to doing this in the studio, we were on radio for 3 or 4 years. So we never really focused on marketing Cordell & Cordell. It was really about a project that I enjoy doing, to be honest with you, at this stage of my life. I think it's interesting, it's fun. So this is kind of my pet project. It's sort of regarded in the firm. But there was little to no expectation that we would ever see any monetary benefit. But quite frankly, we should be pursuing that. And I want to, in the future, to try to be more conscientious about letting you know that, yes, Cordell & Cordell, as I think all of you know, does domestic relations. That's what Cordell & Cordell practiced exclusively for the first 30 or so years. And now we have an additional group, a new practice area that we've added that falls under the umbrella of family law, and that's things related to estate planning. So that's the focus, of course, of this show, and we do want to let you know that we probably have an office in your area, and we probably have practitioners in that office of the estate planning group. But you would need to call to find out if that's true in your city. But we do have Cordell & Cordell offices in most major cities. And I'll tell you this, in order to encourage you to follow up, we're also offering, yes, a 15% discount. And we think that maybe that will be the nudge you need to come in, to give us a call and to do something that, quite frankly, you should have done already. Or maybe you did it years ago, you haven't looked at it since. So we want to incentivize you to come in. So mention this show. We want to know if people come from this show. So we'll give you 15% off if you mention the show. So that being said, let's talk about Hulk Hogan. So as we say to you many times before, when we do these shows, often, we're not biographers, and you can find good biographies of almost everybody we do a show about. And yet we want to set the stage. So we do want to gain enough familiarity with the life of the people we talk about to be able to set the stage to talk about the things we're really interested in talking about. And you're interested, I think, primarily in these things you're watching the show. So to do that, we have to acquire some knowledge about their lives. And in some cases, we'll be a fan already, Frank Sinatra. I mean, there are a number of examples I can give you of people we've done that I know a lot about their life because I'm a fan. But in this case, I don't know much about him, so we've done the research we need to do to be able to talk about the things that we think will most interest you. So having said that, Sherry, tell us about Hulk
Hogan.
Hogan's
He's
life.
quite the character. He really is. But we'll start with, him as a child. So we all know him, for the most part, as Hulk Hogan. But that was a name change. He was not really named Hulk.
I think
we all could have guessed
expected that.
His real name was Terry Gene Bollea. And that's, his original name. He changed it to Hulk Hogan after he fell in love with wrestling. But looking at his life before wrestling, he was born in Augusta, Georgia, August 11th of 1953, to a dad and a mom that were together, that were very Italian, very just regular folks. His dad was a construction foreman. He was a pipe fitter. And his mom was a homemaker. And he grew up, and they moved not too, I think he was like a year and a half years old. And they moved from Augusta, Georgia to Tampa, Florida, which, Hulk forever has just loved his state of Florida.
And he stayed in Florida.
Yes, he sure did. Yeah, he passed away in Florida as well. As a kid, he was bullied quite a bit because he was big. Right? Which you can expect.
Usually you wouldn't expect to be bullied because you're big.
Yeah, he was, though. He was heavier set. He was, in the end, he was like 6'7". So he was always a big kid. And they always wanted him to play football and, do the big things. But he was very gentle-hearted person, unlike his brother, who got into a lot of fights. His brother was 8 years older than him, and his brother was the guy that you would have thought would have gotten into wrestling. But Hulk, he was more into music, and he excelled in baseball, and he was in several bands. He even got paid to do gigs while he was doing music.
Did he sing?
He played the guitar.
Huh.
So that's what he did. Played bass guitar, like I said, several bands, and then, things changed. He got into wrestling in 1977 after training with championship wrestler from Florida. And that's where the name Hulk Hogan came about. So, and then he was seen by Vince McMahon Sr., who is big into the wrestling world.
Prominent figure in that field.
Yes, big time. He's a big manager. So he was really looking at Hulk and his size, again, 6'7" at this time in 77. And he rose to stardom. WWF in 1983, he quickly became one of the top draws, main event star. His personality just really came through. He was always fun-loving. And, he had this thing where he'd rip off his shirt and just be all,
Yeah.
So he was the Hulkster. In 1984, it was HULKAMANIA. And there were shirts all over the place. I can just see the shirt just in my head. I can the yellow shirt with a HULKAMANIA written all over it, all kind of ripped up.
I don't have any memory of this.
I'm a big fan of the 80s. So, and he was big, huge in the 80s.
He dominated the 80s
yes.
in wrestling. I found that out.
Yeah,
So
just everything.
Yeah, he won every title, and he owned the 80s.
He sure did. He also reinvented himself too. He was always the good guy, but then he reinvented himself as a villain, and he became Hollywood Hogan.
See, this whole thing about wrestling, and
It's a
I'm
story.
trying to decide, is this a sport or is it theater? And I think some would argue it's a little bit of both.
Yeah.
Some would argue it's all theater, others all sport. So I just never understood it, was never drawn to it.
Very super fans, though. It's kind of like if you've ever gone to a Comic-Con, it's kind of the same thing. You've got your WrestleMania fans, and they're really into it. They can tell you everything about these characters. And they are. They're big
They're
personalities.
characters, yeah.
Yes.
So he continued wrestling in the 90s.
He sure did.
And just give a quick list of the titles he held. I don't think those of you who think he was just this extreme, outrageous character, and he's known for being outrageous. No, he was outrageous, but he held every title that you could own and over. And list some of those.
He did a historic victory over Andre the Giant at WrestleMania 3 back in 87. Like you said, he headlined nearly every major WWF, WWE event in the 80s. He took a little time out, and then in 2002, he won the undisputed WWE Championship at the age of 48. He participated in major storylines through the early 2010s. He was inducted into the WWE Hall of Fame back in 2005. And what's really cool about that, he was inducted by Sylvester Stallone, who, of course, we all know who played Rocky.
Rocky.
So pretty exciting.
To supplement that, so he was crowned 12-time world champion, including 6 WWF, which I find out is World Wrestling Federation. Later became WWE, World Wrestling Entertainment.
Yes.
So for a while, they were separate organizations. There were a couple that were competing, along with WCW. So anyway, he had 6 of the WWF and WWE titles and 6 of the WCW world titles. And he's the only wrestler to win back-to-back Royal Rumble matches in 90 and 91. So, I mean, he definitely was incredibly successful in his field, whether you consider his field sports or theater. I mean, and in fairness, it is some of both. And he obviously was extraordinary at it. So I can see why he had a lot of fans, and he was very dedicated. And despite some hiccups along the way, which we'll talk about, he was much liked. I mean, his fans revered him, and he was very attentive to his fans and very protective of his reputation, despite these challenges we'll talk about. But so he was a guy who worked very, very hard to get where he was. And I always respect that. I respect people who have ambition and they're willing to work really, really hard. I think that's just an impressive thing. So should we talk about his personal life before we get into toward the end of his career?
Yeah, we can get into his personal life. His first wife, Linda Hogan, they met and they fell in love and all that good stuff that followed. They married back in 1983, and she was 24, he was 30, and they had 2 children. So they had Brooke and Nick Hogan. And a lot of folks know all 4 of them because they had their reality show, Hogan Knows Best, which aired on, I believe, VH1.
That was on for several years, wasn't it?
Yes, it was. I think it may have been 9 years, I think, that was on.
Was it?
Let me see. Let me double check.
I thought it was just like 3 years. So he had this show for a while, and it was successful.
Hogan Knows Best.
A reality show. So go ahead. Talking about you're still on his first marriage?
His first marriage. So, sadly, a lot of these reality shows, when they open up the doors to the cameras, these families, it doesn't end well. So divorce happened in 2009. And, well, before you know it, in 2010, he got married again. His second wife, Jennifer McDaniel. And she was 36 at the time. He was 57. And that marriage lasted 11 years. It was known as they led a very private life together, but public legal disputes, of course, came about. That's where more people know her.
So we should focus, though. We should really call attention to the first marriage because that marriage was 26 years. Linda, and that, as we've said, is the 2 children were born to that marriage. The only kids he had.
Yes.
And that marriage really, much of what he acquired in terms of his wealth. At the time he married, of course, he had very little, 83. And then thereafter, those next decades is when he really acquired his reputation and much of his wealth. So you can imagine that when that divorce came along, that was going to have an impact on the balance of his life financially. And
I think she got a lot in that divorce.
Yeah. So we'll talk about that. But so then he divorces her and turns around almost immediately and marries Jennifer. And he and Jennifer are married for
11 years.
11.
Yes, and they got their divorce in 2021, and then in 2023 he got married again to his third and final wife, Sky Daly, and she was a yoga instructor, mother of 3 herself from previous relations of her own. So the 2 of them did not have children together, but she was a mom, he's a dad, and their marriage Like I said, they got married in 2023. She was 44. He was 70. So there was 26 years between the two of them. And that's who he was married to up until his death. So it was just almost 2 years they were married before he passed.
Okay. So, you can imagine that this person who comes along last, it's substantially younger.
Yeah, only a couple of years older than his daughter.
Yeah, 26 years difference in age. So when you have a divorce under those circumstances, and there's not a prenup, or there's challenges about a prenup, or there are other issues about property and assets, it kind of sets the stage for conflict with stepmoms that we've seen so often. In this case, remember, the two children, who are adults, of course, they're the children of the first marriage to Linda. So now that we've talked about his marriages, let's pick up about what occurred during the period, say, we'll call it the second marriage, so 10 through 21, and then, of course, thereafter we'll pick up. So he had health problems. He wasn't able to work a lot in some ways during those years, but also he had some great gigs. He had this television show you described, which also continued into that period. Is that correct?
His television show?
The reality show?
Yeah, the reality show is with his first wife.
But who did a reality show?
His daughter, Brooke. She continued. She was Brooke Knows Best.
Okay, so the Hogan Knows Best, that was 2007 to 09. And then later, Brooke carried on.
Yeah. People love the family.
Yeah. So you've seen these shows?
I've seen some of them, a couple episodes.
So how long did Brooke's show last?
Brooke's show, I don't think it lasted as long. I want to say maybe a year. And Brooke, though, she got into the music world, which is kind of cool because, her dad came from that. He really loved music. So she's put out a couple albums. She has acting, singing. So that's kind of where her career went. And I guess we could kind of rewind on that. She was born in 1988. And again, she's a TV personality, singer, actress, and she is now a mother. And the brother, his name is Nick Hogan, also part, of course, of that reality show with the family. He was born in 1990, and he is also, reality TV personality. And he got himself into quite a bit of trouble when he was young. He got in a really bad car accident, and it was about the time that the parents were getting a divorce. And I think he had a little bit too much to drink. He ended up a year in jail, and his friend that he was in the car with suffered from severe and still does brain damage.
Yeah, and he was at the time involved in street racing.
Yes.
And he raced cars, I guess, on the track too, but it's the type of racing that included street racing. And apparently that was something that, he still lives with. I don't know the story of all that, but it was something that they tried to keep out of the press, but you couldn't because he already had some fame.
Yeah.
And so that occurred about what years in his life?
I do not know what year that happened. I just remember that there was so much coverage on TV about that.
Yeah.
And it was wall-to-wall coverage about his son and what had happened and what was going to happen if he's going to go to jail.
Wonder where that was in relation to the divorce. Aaron, can you look up when did the accident occur that involved Nick?
Yeah, I think it was
Nick Hogan's car accident occurred on August 26, 2007.
2007, yeah.
So mom and dad are fighting.
So,
divorce is settled in 2009.
That was a crazy time in their lives.
Yeah.
I suspect there was a lawsuit in that. He would have been maybe not a minor, but 07, depending on his birth dates and the date of that event, 17 years old. Was there a negligent entrustment? In other words, when you have a car at that age and you're underage, the car is going to be in the name of a custodian or typically a parent. And that means that if somebody's behaving badly and the parent had reason to know about it, then they're subject to, even an adult could be sued for negligent entrustment, but you can imagine a parent especially having peculiar obligations regarding, the driver is normally vulnerable. I didn't read anything about a divorce or a lawsuit like that, the consequences, but certainly you can assume that there would have been some sort of settlement.
Well, and like you said, that happened in 2007, and that is also the same time that, well, something else happened that later was revealed.
You want to go ahead and set the stage, Bubba, the love sponge Clem, who actually apparently was a friend of Hulk Hogan, which, some problems we develop in our life, you can't see it coming. It just happens. Yeah. But then other times you associate with people where, you're not surprised when things go sideways. And in this case, we don't know the full nature of the relationship, but there was a business/friendship relationship with a guy who called himself Bubba the Love Sponge Clem. So his name, I guess, is Bubba Clem. Bubba the Love Sponge Clem. And his wife.
So his real name, Todd Allen Clem, and he had it legally changed to Bubba the Love Sponge.
Okay.
And his wife, her name was Heather.
Okay, Heather Clem.
Mm-hmm. Now, Hulk Hogan was actually, they were such good friends that Hulk was his best man in the wedding.
Okay, so look, I'm not real sympathetic toward Hulk Hogan on this subject.
No.
But there was the infamous sex tape. Maybe some of you have heard about this, but there was a recording of him having sex with Heather. He didn't know he was being videotaped. And also he was apparently videotaped or recorded making certain racial slurs. All of this, I think, occurred in the same period, though these didn't come to light until later. But the recordings were made before his divorce, the first marriage. This is relevant relating to property settlement and whatnot from the marriage, which we'll talk about in a little bit, that first divorce that was so expensive for him. But so keep in mind that these violations or these torts, invasions of privacy, occurred around that time. The racial slurs, which again were the same period, but they became public permissibly, like 12, 13, 14, 2012, 13, 14, even though they were recorded around the same period. However, there was a lawsuit regarding the video, the sex tape. And as the sex tape, some of you are familiar with this, I think is a marvelous result. And that's where Gawker, which was this publication that made its reputation online, this online publisher who made it their job to out people who are homosexual, apparently, to embarrass people, to get access to things like this sex tape of Hulk Hogan where he didn't know about it, and to be the first online with it. This organization went on and did what they did and caused a lot of problems in people's lives, a lot of embarrassment, humiliation, etc., and made money doing it. So Peter Thiel, though, when they decided, I think that this is, I don't know all that it tells, but apparently Peter Thiel, who I think that he concedes that he's homosexual, or gay is the word, that he's gay, but at the time he did not concede that, and he may not concede it now, in fact. But anyway, it was Gawker that went public with some sort of evidence that he had a gay friend, that he was gay. And Peter Thiel was embarrassed by that. And Peter Thiel is not a guy you want to embarrass too much, given many of you know he's one of the richest people in the world. PayPal, he and Elon Musk were partners in PayPal, and he has what is the firm now that has the defense?
Palantir?
Oh, Palantir. Yeah, Palantir is one of his companies. He's a majority shareholder in Palantir and occupies a position on the board. He's a very powerful and influential guy and has been a key figure in the startups of a lot of great billion-dollar companies, so multi-billion-dollar. So anyway, he was looking for an opportunity to right this wrong, so to speak. And he knew that, or had read about this outing that was occurring, or this outing's not the word, but this embarrassing tape relating to this sexual encounter with Hulk Hogan. So he offers, Hulk Hogan, remember, at this time didn't have much money. This occurred around, 14 or so. So he had gone through a very expensive divorce and had a few other scandals. So it wasn't a time where he had a lot of cash sitting around. And to do a lawsuit like this, that's going to be a federal suit, a constitutional matter, invasion of privacy, that went ultimately to the Supreme Court. And to be honest with you, it's a landmark case. It's now in textbooks at law schools.
Yeah, it has a special name too, the Hogan effect.
Yeah, the Hogan effect. So what it was about was, even if you're famous, are you entitled to expectations of privacy? And if so, what are the contours? How do you define those boundaries versus somebody who isn't famous at all, where clearly that person, if you secretly had a recording of them having sex with someone under normal conditions, that would be an assumption of privacy. So that would have been easy for a court to award in favor of the plaintiff. But it wasn't so easy in this case, at least in the lower court levels. But ultimately, the Supreme Court even held up this decision. So Peter Thiel funded all of this. Peter Thiel, he went to Hogan and said, look, I want you to bring this suit. I'll fund it. The outcome, of course, was one where Gawker gets this judgment against him. A jury awarded $140 million. And it was just a wonderful verdict, in my opinion, a wonderful verdict. So this effectively bankrupted Gawker. Gawker ended up, they settled, I guess through the bankruptcy courts was the way the settlement occurred, but they settled and they ended up getting 30-something million in total. So this was a wonderful outcome. And it's an example where, Hogan found himself in a position where he was going to be very embarrassed. And without Peter Thiel, this might have gone forward. I don't know if Hogan would have gotten the financing to be able to have done this sort of cause of action because of the incredible expense. You can get lawyers, personal injury lawyers, or when I say personal injury, many of you don't think that includes torts of this nature. But when you say personal injury, normally that would include things like torts other than a physical injury or malpractice or things like that. And in those cases, normally lawyers take it on a 1/3 basis, a contingency, meaning if they don't get anything, then it doesn't cost you anything. And even the attorneys will advance the costs associated with the case. That's things like discovery and all those very expensive things, experts. But in this case, when you have a case like this, it's more like a corporate case. You can't find many attorneys who will take a case like this on a contingency. So it's my understanding that had it not been for Peter Thiel stepping forward with the financing, that this case may not have gone forward. So I'm assuming there was no contingency. If there was, it was only a fraction of the compensation that was to occur that way. I don't know the specific retainer agreement. But anyway, so this was even though a court ruled that this could not be published, it still, word got around. Maybe it wasn't contradictory when you think about Hulk Hogan's reputation. You can say, well, isn't that what people might expect? I don't know. It depends on how you view him. But it's true, it wasn't like he was a pastor of a church. Still, it wasn't helpful to his career. And then there was the incident involving racial slurs, which I think were recorded around the same time. He's hanging out with people that apparently dislike him so, or for whatever reason were prepared to set him up for destruction. And it's hard to be sympathetic when he chooses to be with people that he should have been on notice. In any case, the racial slurs were things that he apparently said about they were about people who are black. Apparently his daughter was dating a black guy. And did she marry a black guy?
No.
Okay, anyway, so I didn't know if it related to the wedding or something. But so he made some remarks in relation to this relationship. And then he made some more general remarks on the subject. They weren't mean-spirited. I mean, again, I didn't hear them, so I can't say that. But I got the impression that he was just being reckless with his language. But it was something for which he paid a price. I mean, there were a number of cancellations, let's see here. the recordings were made around '07 and '08, and they were secretly recorded. And while the court incidentally would not protect the audio tape, and the reason is that those statements were made under circumstances where there wouldn't really be the expectation of privacy that you would have having sex in a bedroom. So in this case, he apparently was with a few people, including this same person, this Clem.
Bubba the Love Sponge.
Yeah, the Love Sponge. So he was heard repeatedly using racial slurs, used the N-word while discussing his daughter's personal relationships. And she'd been, dating a black guy. This was captured. The courts permitted it to be aired or to be played, and it wasn't good for his reputation. As a matter of fact, he was, his contract was terminated with the WWE, and who would ever thought that would happen?
Yeah.
And they scrubbed his image and name from their platforms, temporarily removed him from the Hall of Fame.
Yeah, that had
He apologized publicly, acknowledging his use of such language as inexcusable. And he did describe it as kind of the lowest point in his life. But he was persona non grata for a period of time. But he did rehabilitate his image after that. He didn't remain in that penalty box, I don't think, for the balance of his career. He later was sort of welcomed back, and I think those, he had to do penance for those appropriately. But then I think that toward the end, he was reinstated. I don't have the details of how the WWE responded, except that it said that he was reinstated. So I assume that that's in all respects, both as to his standing, his awards, etc. So these are sort of unforced errors. These are things that impaired the balance of his life. These occurred later in his life when he should have been going into retirement and enjoying the fruits of his incredible success that he'd had. But instead, he has things going on, some of which are attributable to mistakes he had made earlier, some attributable to more recent. And we can't do this show without talking about decisions other than simply, did you go to a lawyer? Did you have this clause inserted? Did you have this provision inserted? Yeah, those are important, and we do talk about those things. But the reason we call this Life's Third Act is that we want to focus on things beyond simply legal documents, and that's what I think makes this show a little different from some, and that's let us learn generally from the way people live their lives with certainly a focus on what are the legal implications, but not exclusively. So anyway, we've come up to the point where he was divorced from the second wife. He married Sky. That was in 23. She had been, talk a little bit about what she had been doing. Was she a yoga teacher?
She was a yoga instructor. So, and she had had previous relationships, so she had 3 children of her own. Don't really know much about those kids. Sadly, they were not even married, but almost 2 years before he passed.
Well, I mean, you wonder when somebody that much younger than the person they marry, they probably
44.
don't expect to celebrate a 20th wedding anniversary.
Yeah, he's 70. But I will say this about Hulk. The last I saw clips of him on TV was July of 2024. He popped up. He was a guest speaker at the Republican National Convention, and that got a lot of folks riled up. They're like, Hulk Hogan. And the
I'd
video.
forgotten that. You're right. He was there.
He popped up, and I tell you what, he looked like he was in great shape. Now, he has had multiple surgeries, a lot of back issues.
We'll talk about that. And
I think probably in the 80s, there was some steroid use before they knew more about that. And I think he was one of those who, no more steroids. He was very anti-steroids after,
After having used them.
Yes.
Yeah. So it was a surprise when he died. He was 71. Mm-hmm. So it's not as if this was expected.
No, but in a wrestler's life, on average, they usually make it around 50, and with him being such a large man and all the things he had gone through, all the surgeries, I think it's a great thing, again, that he made it to 70. I think that might have been, he wasn't expecting it.
Are you saying most wrestlers die at 50?
Around that, yeah. There's been a lot of them that's passed away.
Yeah, that's...
Because they've been through so much. I mean, all that...
That's probably younger than sumo
head,
wrestlers. Jeez,
I don't know. That's just some stats that I saw. I was like, oh my gosh, around 50. I'm like, that's...
That might have something to do with more than
lifestyle.
What they do in the ring.
All the concussions, probably.
So, okay. Let's talk about his death. He died in 25.
Yeah, just a couple months ago.
Yeah. So apparently he has what appeared to be a heart attack, but his wife, who was with him at home at the time, said that he just simply stopped breathing. But I think he had actually died by the time the police arrived. So they interviewed, of course, the family, and I don't know if they've done an autopsy yet. I expect the autopsy to be done.
Yeah, I think they just did the autopsy late August. And so I don't think there's any, as of when this airs, I don't think they have any results yet. But the police had talked to that occupational therapist that was at the home.
So that brings us then to talking about, let's see what estate planning had been in place. So, well, we're going to stop right here. So as we typically do, we're going to break this show into two parts. The first part has been a discussion of the life of Hulk Hogan. We've talked about a number of things that relate to the estate, but we've kind of held the discussion more of a legal nature and the death and thereafter for the next show. So it seems like a good way to divide these shows up. So I hope that you tune in for the next episode of Life's Third Act, where we'll pick up talking about Hulk Hogan and his death and estate. Thank you.
We hope you enjoyed Life's Third Act, sponsored by Cordell & Cordell, your advisors for estate planning and beyond. Subscribe and join us weekly for thought-provoking discussion and topics exclusively focused on estate planning and your financial future. Discover more at CordellCordell.com. The choice of a lawyer is an important decision and should not be based solely on advertisements.